Tensura. The Abyss Demon by Wahab. Chapter 69. The Demon Lord Banquet, Walpurgis, had officially begun. The event was attended by a total of 10 people, minus Carrion. Demon, the Lord of Darkness, Guy Crimson. Demon, the Chaos Creator, Rimuru Tempest. Dragonoid, the Destroyer, Milam Nava. Pixie, Labyrinth Master, Ramirez. Giant, the Earthquake, De Gruel. Vampire, the Bloody Lord, Roy Valentine. Fallen, the Sleeping Ruler, Dino. Harpy, the Sky Queen, Frey. Deathman, the Marionette Master, Clayman. Demonoid, the Platinum Saber, Leon Cromwell. Misery, Guy's maid, made all the above introductions in her clear, loud voice. Silence reigned in the hall for a couple seconds, no demon lord brave enough to break the silence. Taking casual glances around, Rimuru began, "We're all here, good." His eyes traveled towards everyone seated. "We're all gathered here because one of you was dumb enough to piss me off, and that person will die today, right here." The silence persisted. Every demon lord looked confused, unable to understand what Rimuru said. Only Leon looked nervous. Achieving his goal of creating tension in the room, Rimuru's gaze landed on Clayman. Clayman, the sudden attention sent shockwaves through the gathering. "Would you like to explain yourself? All the activities you and the other demon lords have carried out in the Great Jura Forest." Especially when Rimuru addressed the string of events Clayman had orchestrated in the Jura Forest alongside Frey and Carrion. Clayman's expression stiffened as his mind raced. Frey, seated beside him, visibly tensed, her usually composed demeanor cracking under the weight of Rimuru's scrutiny. Both were sweating bullets, realizing their every scheme had been exposed. Feigning ignorance, Clayman gave a thin smile and asked, "What are you talking about, Demon Lord Rimuru?" His voice trembled slightly despite his attempt to sound confident. But the moment Rimuru mentioned the orc disaster, a flicker of panic flashed across Clayman's face. His cover was blown. Rimuru leaned back with an air of calm authority, his words cutting like blades. "You think I or Veldora wouldn't notice the puppet strings you've been pulling? The Orc Lord's rampage, Charybdis reawakening, and you even had a hand in Falmu's brazen attack on the Jurid Tempest Federation. All of it points back to you, Clayman." A cold sweat broke out on Clayman's forehead as he stammered, How could you possibly?" He stopped mid-sentence, realizing he was only digging himself deeper. His carefully prepared excuses about Carrion's supposed betrayal and the rise of Tempest as a destabilizing force evaporated. He hadn't anticipated Rimuru knowing this much, let alone linking everything back to him. Clayman squirmed in his seat, his gaze darting around the table, avoiding Rimuru's piercing stare. He opened his mouth several times, but no coherent words came out. The other demon lords watched in silence, their expressions ranging from amusement to pity. Internally, they were already writing him off as doomed. To piss off Rimuru, the Chaos Creator, was one thing. To be caught red-handed by him? That was suicide. Rimuru's voice cut through Clayman's futile silence. "You seem to have forgotten the treaty between the Demon Lord Council and the Storm Dragon, Veldora. No one is to disturb the Jura Forest. Yet you not only violated it but caused chaos within its borders." Clayman's throat tightened, unable to offer even the flimsiest excuse. He cast a desperate glance at Frey, silently pleading for her support. But Frey, usually poised and sharp, was pale and frozen. Her hands gripped the edge of the table, her mind overwhelmed by the sheer pressure Rimuru exuded. Rimuru let out a quiet sigh, his patience waning. "If you can't answer that, then let's try a simpler question. Why the animosity between you, Eurazania, and Tempest? Surely, you have an explanation for that?" For a moment, something changed in Clayman's demeanor. His face twisted into a confident smirk, and he straightened in his seat as though he had finally figured out a way to turn the tables. Or at least salvage his pride. "Oh, that," Clayman began, his voice laced with newfound bravado. "Allow me to explain." Yet his words, spoken too boldly, were met with the unwavering golden gaze of Rimuru, and the banquet hall held its collective breath for what would come next. Clayman's explanation went like this. Demon Lord Carrion was looking to expand his influence and thus established relations with the new nation established in the Jura Forest, Tempest. Carrion's forces are currently in Tempest, Clayman emphasized as he tried his absolute best to not get himself killed here. Clayman turned to Rimuru. "You are mistaken, Demon Lord Rimuru. I have no connection to Falmouth. It was Carrion who instigated them, leading them to invade the Great Jura Forest." Rimuru's gaze was cold and uninterested as he asked, "What makes you say that?" He planned on questioning Clayman until he lied himself into a corner. Clayman was taken aback by Rimuru's question. He stumbled to piece together something to say. Well, Carrion and the King of Tempest, a Majin called Toru, are in cahoots. He cooperated with this low-level Majins to fend off the Falmouth army he had instigated, causing harm to humans. Clayman continued, "My assumption is, Carrion plans to support this low-level Majin and give him a place in our council to strengthen his influence. Such self-serving behavior violates the pact made by the Demon Lords. And in this way, my subordinate, Mayulan, who gathered this information for me, was killed by this Majin, Toru." Clayman paused, pretending to be overcome by emotions. "This is why I made up my mind to take vengeance. What's more, this Toru conspired with Carrion in an attempt to kill me. Mayulan informed me of this with the last of her strength, and upon learning of Carrion's betrayal, Milam was so enraged that she destroyed the animal kingdom of Eurazania, and Carrion was killed. Of course, I admonished Milam, telling her that doing such a thing without evidence is unforgivable. But please, do not blame Milam. She did it all for my sake. I'm certain you understand now." Everyone patiently listened to Clayman's prattling. Some of them were already asleep, Dino that is. Once Clayman was done explaining himself, everyone turned to Rimuru to hear what he had to say. Rimuru, his expression utterly unreadable, leaned forward slightly and addressed Clayman with a chillingly neutral tone. "Is that so?" he said after Clayman's impassioned explanation. The faintest flicker of amusement crossed his golden eyes, but it was gone in an instant. "Well, if you're so certain, then surely you have evidence to back your claims." The casual demand for proof sent a ripple through the banquet hall, and Clayman's confidence visibly faltered. He hadn't expected this. He thought his explanation would at least buy him some time. "Evidence," Clayman stuttered, his voice growing faint. "Yes," Rimuru replied, his tone sharpening slightly. "If you want to prove your case, you should have evidence, something tangible. A voice recording, a witness, anything that substantiates your claims." The room went silent as the gravity of Rimuru's words settled over the gathered demon lords. Clayman's face turned pale as he struggled to formulate a response. His evidence consisted entirely of the testimony of a single person, Mayulan, his subordinate. And even she wasn't present to vouch for him now. Clayman's hands clenched into fists beneath the table, his mind spinning in panic. What am I supposed to say? What can I even do? His carefully constructed narrative crumbled in the face of Rimuru's calm yet relentless questioning. He realized there was no way he could convince anyone with such flimsy justification. Seeing Clayman's silence, Rimuru's lips curled into the faintest of smiles, one that sent a shiver down the spines of everyone present. "Nothing to say?" he asked, his voice laced with mock curiosity. "I thought as much." Suddenly, Rimuru raised his hand, and the atmosphere in the room shifted as an enormous orb appeared at the center of the table. Everyone's attention was immediately drawn to it. "This," Rimuru said, gesturing to the orb, "will project the truth, unfiltered and unaltered, so that everyone here can see for themselves what really happened." He paused, his gaze settling on Clayman, whose face had turned an alarming shade of white. "I'm sure you won't mind if we take a look, right?" Clayman's breathing quickened, and his eyes darted wildly around the room. He was trapped, and he knew it. The other demon lords, now thoroughly intrigued, leaned forward in their seats, eager to see what Rimuru would reveal. Rimuru, his expression as calm as ever, activated the orb. It flared to life, projecting a vivid series of images and sounds into the air above the table. "Stop! Stop that! Please, Clayman-sama!" Right there in the ball, Clayman's field general was screaming and being transformed into an incomplete Charybdis. And that wasn't all. Clayman's forces were annihilated. The plan failed. The losses suffered here are far too great. Well, Laplace warned him. Clayman can't blame anyone for it but himself. We'll need to brief him about this. The conversation between the two weird jesters Geld had witnessed was all on video. That must be Tear and Footman from the Harlequin Alliance. With Laplace's name popping up, it had to be them. That and him, I had my suspicion that someone else is working with Clayman. Rimuru thought as he watched the video like everyone else in the room. Understood. It is estimated that all of this is connected, Raphael concurred. Clayman's confident facade shattered completely as he sank back into his chair, trembling. The other demon lords exchanged knowing glances, their suspicions about Clayman now confirmed. Rimuru let the images play out in full before deactivating the orb and leaning back in his chair. "Well, Clayman," he said, his tone deceptively light, "this is what you call evidence." His golden eyes glinted with cold amusement. Clayman sat frozen, utterly unsure of how to respond to the overwhelming revelations. His once confident smirk had evaporated, replaced with a mask of dread and disbelief. Before he could muster even a fragment of a response, Rimuru's calm yet earth-shattering voice cut through the silence. "Just so you know," Rimuru began, his tone cold and commanding, "I am the king of the Jurid Tempest Federation. And that, low-level Majin you mentioned?" He leaned forward slightly, his golden eyes locking onto Clayman with deadly precision. "That was me." The words hit Clayman like a thunderclap, leaving him visibly stunned. His mouth opened in shock, unable to form coherent words as the realization struck him like a bolt of lightning. The truth left him reeling, and it wasn't long before he realized just how deep the pit he dug for himself was. Rimuru's voice broke through Clayman's spiraling thoughts. "Tempest is the nation I built with Veldora, and as such, we are its protectors. You made a grave mistake when you decided to target it, Clayman." His tone was calm and menacing. "Your schemes, everything from ordering Myulan to erect an anti-magic barrier over my nation to all the troubles you caused, I already knew it all." Clayman trembled as Rimuru leaned forward, his expression cold and unyielding. "Now," Rimuru said softly, his voice like the calm before the storm, "give me one good reason not to kill you here." For a moment, silence reigned in the banquet hall. Clayman's mind raced, but no answers came. His will crumbled as he realized the full extent of Rimuru's dominance. The calm and composed chaos creator had been playing him the entire time, observing and unraveling his every move. And now there was no escape. Clayman's lips twitched as hysteria bubbled within him. He suddenly burst into laughter, his voice cracking with desperation and madness. "That's right. I still have Milam by my side. With her power, not even Demon Lord Rimuru would be able to do anything to me. I suppose too much scheming really is a schemer's downfall." Clayman's mind thought so, whether out of desperation or fear. "Kill me?" Clayman cackled, his wide eyes betraying his despair. "You think I'll just let myself be killed? No, no, no. I am a demon lord, after all. If I'm going to die, I won't go out without a fight." He straightened, as he stood, his voice gaining a desperate edge. "You're up, Milam." In his desperation, Clayman had placed all his hopes on his trump card, Milam. If she could buy him even a moment of distraction, he could escape using his astral body and warn him. But fate had no intention of granting him such mercy. Milam stood in response to Clayman's call, her movement slow and deliberate. For a moment, the room was tense as all eyes turned to her. But just as she prepared to move, Rimuru turned his cold gaze on her and said a single word, "Sit." That single word, spoken without any visible force or power, carried an overwhelming authority that made even the other demon lords flinch. To everyone's shock, Milam froze in place, her usual fiery and untamable energy vanishing in an instant. She blinked, her eyes wide like a scolded child, and then plopped back into her seat. "Don't be mad at me, Rimuru," Milam said with a pout, her tone innocent and light-hearted. "Look, I'm sitting, see?" The entire hall fell into stunned silence. Not even the most seasoned demons lords could hide their disbelief. Milam, one of the most powerful and wild beings in existence, had obeyed Rimuru like a disciplined child. And Clayman? He looked as though he had seen a ghost. His last shred of hope shattered before his eyes. But I used the orb of domination that he gave me. Shish. She should have been completely under my power. Did she not killed Carrion at my order? Clayman was so shocked by the turn of events that he had no idea what he blurted out. "You really thought I could be controlled with a thing like this?" exclaimed Milam as she tore off the orb of domination. Answer me, Clayman. Who's the he you were talking about? Neelam asked, her eyes sharp. Hey, who are you calling dead? A voice spoke. It came from the lion-masked man behind Frey. The man ripped the mask off his face to reveal Carrion. What? No, then it's true. But Frey told me. No, Frey too. You betrayed me as well, didn't you? Clayman cried out as he turned to Frey with a half-crazed glare. When did you get the mistaken idea that I was ever on your side? Frey gave a nonchalant reply. Don't you toy with me. Clayman gnashed his teeth in fury. Rimuru smiled coldly at Clayman, a smile that carried a malice so sharp it felt like a blade pressed against his throat. Hey, if you're going to take this seriously, Rimuru said in a voice that promised nothing but pain, I'd advise you to start now. But don't worry, I won't be the one to fight you, one of my subordinates will do just fine. Clayman's instinct screamed at him to run, but before he could even react, Shion blurred into motion. In an instant, she was upon him, her fists flying in a devastating flurry of blows. The force of her punches caused visible damage on Clayman, leaving him bleeding and Shion's hands bloodied. The other demon lords sat in silence, their expressions a mix of morbid curiosity and quiet satisfaction. To them, Clayman's fate was sealed. In an instant, the round table in the conference disappeared. It was stored within Rimuru's stomach, giving Shion enough space to play with Clayman. Rimuru glanced at Guy, if you would do me the honors. Guy understood what Rimuru meant. With a gesture, the room expanded in such a way that only Clayman and Shion remained at the center of the room, ready to battle it out. The room where the Walpurgis was currently happening is a dimension created by Guy with his own power. Therefore, he has absolute control over it. Only someone with a higher spatial manipulation skill than Guy could hope to take control of the space, nevertheless it would be hard. Clayman stood up wobbly, a black aura emanated from him, instantly healing him. He angrily glared at Shion, accepting her as her enemy. He gladly chose to battle her than her master. Then the fox that had been with him since the start of the banquet swelled up in size as it stood by Clayman. Another figure emerged from Clayman's shadow, wrapped in a black robe. Report. This is believed to be the nine-head mentioned by Mayulan. Analysis indicates that it is under the controlling spell. Demon Dominate. Undo the spell? Rimuru proceeded to undo the spell on Nine-Head, stripping Clayman of yet another pillar of his force. The moment Rimuru undid the spell, Nine-Head gave a joyous yelp, before it slowly collapsed, its massive form shrinking into that of a small fox cub. Rimuru glanced at Chiron, who stood like a sentinel at his side. Without a word, the two shared an understanding. Chiron's black eyes flashed with resolve as he vanished in a blur of speed, a gust of wind marking his departure. In an instant, he reappeared beside Clayman, where Nine-Head, now reduced to a vulnerable state, lay unconscious. Clayman's eyes widened in disbelief at Chiron's sheer speed. He hissed, but before he could react, Chiron had already secured the fox cub in his arms and returned to Rimuru's side just as swiftly. The entire exchange had taken mere seconds, leaving Clayman seething. Rimuru spared a glance at the fox cub, his gaze softening briefly. Chiron, hold on to it for now, he commanded, his tone sharp but calm. Chiron nodded, his expression unyielding as he cradled the cub protectively. Turning his focus back to the battlefield, Rimuru's gaze hardened. With a sharp snap of his fingers, a barrier erupted around the battlefield, glowing faintly with a mix of azure and gold. The barrier pulsed with an energy so sturdy and dense that even the most reckless bystander would think twice before attempting to breach it. This should be enough, Rimuru muttered, his tone calm yet commanding. His barrier wasn't just for protection, it was a declaration. No one would interfere, though the mere presence of the Chaos Creator ensured no one would have dared to begin with. Shion stood at the ready, her aura blazing with determination. Her violet eyes gleamed with an almost savage anticipation as she tightened her grip on her odachi, its blade radiating a menacing glow. Opposite her, Clayman's face twisted into a mix of fury. His smug confidence returned as he gestured toward his subordinate, the elegantly dressed but eerily lifeless puppet. The doll-like figure stepped forward, its movements unnaturally smooth as it attacked Shion. Ha ha ha, what do you think of my finest masterpiece, Viola? Isn't it beautiful? Clayman boasted. Viola kept up with its attack, throwing a barrage of every magic attacks it had in its arsenal. From fire to ice to electricity to crush resonation waves to sword and spear strikes. It seemed to have a limitless supply of every attack type in the world. Despite its strength, it posed no threat to Shion. With an almost bored expression, Shion flowed effortlessly between defense and offense. Her movements were fluid yet efficient, a testament to Rimuru's grueling training regimen. As Viola's blade sliced downward in a sharp arc, Shion merely tilted her body to the side, allowing the strike to pass within a hair's breadth. A quick flick of her wrist sent her odachi clashing against Viola's arm, deflecting the next attack with barely any effort. Each of Viola's follow-up strikes was met with the same calm mastery. Shion blocked with perfect timing, parried with minimal movement, or simply sidestepped with an elegance that belied her raw strength. Her fighting aura flared faintly, her body moving with such precision and efficiency that it seemed she was expending no more energy than a leisurely stroll. "Is this really all you've got?" Shion taunted, a smirk playing on her lips as she deftly sidestepped another attack, her odachi casually deflecting the blade aimed at her throat. For Clayman's so-called masterpiece, I expected a bit more. Clayman scowled, his confidence beginning to waver as he watched his prized creation struggle to even touch the dark Oni. "Don't get cocky," he barked, but his voice betrayed his growing frustration. Unbeknownst to him, Shion had already analyzed every movement Viola made. The doll's attack patterns, though impressive, were repetitive, nothing that her sharp mind and combat experience couldn't dismantle. "Enough of this," Shion muttered, her tone growing serious. She gripped her odachi with both hands, her fighting aura surging as it encased the blade in a vibrant violet glow. Her body tensed for a split second, muscles coiling with raw power before releasing it all at once. In a burst of speed so fast it seemed as though she vanished, she enclosed the distance between herself and Viola. Before Clayman or his doll could react, Shion's blade flashed like a streak of lightning. Viola's limbs were severed cleanly, its arms and legs falling to the ground in an instant. The doll didn't even have time to collapse before Shion's blade came down once more, cleaving Viola's torso in half with surgical precision. The two halves of Clayman's prized creation hit the ground with a resounding thud, the fight over before it had truly begun. Clayman's eyes widened in utter disbelief, his mouth opening and closing as he struggled to process what had just happened. "Impossible. Viola was my finest creation. She was supposed to at least wear you down." Shion turned to him, casually resting her odachi on her shoulder as she smirked. "Oh, she tried," she said mockingly. "But you're too naive to think you could tire me out." From the sidelines, Guy Crimson watched with a raised brow and an approving smirk. He turned to Rimuru, his crimson eyes glinting with amusement. "I have to admit, that one's impressive. A brute with that level of precision and efficiency, she's far more than just raw strength." Rimuru leaned back slightly, a satisfied grin on his face. "Of course she is," he said smugly. "I personally trained all my subordinates, after all. Shion's just showing off what she's learned. It's only natural she's this good." Guy chuckled, crossing his arms. "You got quite the crew, Rimuru. If she's just one of them, I'm curious to see what the others can do." Rimuru shrugged nonchalantly, though his smirk never faded. "You'll see soon enough," he said confidently. Meanwhile, Clayman trembled with fury and fear as Shion began her slow, deliberate approach toward him, her aura crackling with anticipation. "Well then," she said, her voice dangerously low. "Shall we move on to you?" Chapter 70. Clayman was panting for breath as he glared at Shion, a loathsome look on his face. Shion had all but made him admit to her strength. Despite having unleashed his full power, even going as far as morphing into his combat form, possessing 2 extra pairs of arms which grew from his uncovered back, long, thick and protected by a black exoskeleton, he still found it hard to take down Shion. It might have looked like they were equals in strength, but Shion was superior. "Is that all you have?" Shion mocked. "You are far too weak to call yourself a demon lord. How dare you? You'll pay for that. Go, marionette dance." Clayman unleashed 5 puppets, each transforming into a magic born that lunged at Shion. Undeterred, Shion mowed down all 5 with a single swipe. "Pathetic," she said, not a hint of fatigue on her face. "I guess you really aren't all that special." Clayman meanwhile was visibly quivering, taken aback by that fact that the dolls showed no signs of getting up. "Tch, I will admit that you are strong. Then I will add you to my collection." Take this. Demon Marion. Tired of Clayman's antics, Shion leapt into the air, her odachi glowed brighter as she poured more of her fighting aura into it. In a blur of speed, she closed the gap between them, appearing right in front of Clayman's massive form. She swung her blade with such force that the air around it howled, the strike aimed directly at his chest. Clayman barely managed to block the attack with his armored forearm, but the sheer impact sent him skidding backward, leaving deep grooves in the ground, his forearm crushed. The freakish power of Shion as a dark Oni, her busted unique skill, Master Chef, and the Tortu training she had undergone with Rimuru made her a walking calamity. In other words, even in his true form, Clayman stood no chance. Now Clayman crossed his two pairs of steel-like arms to block Shion's fists, but they too were smashed to ribbons. Her next punch landed squarely in the pit of his stomach. Shion planted a follow-up kick on him, making him roll around on the ground in agony. His mask was cracked now, revealing bloodshot eyes. No, this can't be. How could I, a demon lord? Clayman finally understood the difference in power. As he lay broken on the ground gasping for air and trembling from the torment Shion had inflicted, he could barely comprehend how utterly powerless he was. His body, though capable of regeneration, was battered and mutilated beyond recognition. He hadn't even fought Rimuru, the Chaos Creator himself, and yet he was utterly demolished. Shion approached him, her violet eyes blazing with fury, her entire body radiating fighting aura. Her steps were deliberate, each one echoing with menace. She crouched down, her towering presence bearing down on Clayman like an immovable mountain. Her voice low and venomous, cut through the silence. How dare you? Shion seethed. How dare you oppose my beloved master, Rimuru-sama? How dare you harm my friends and our home? For all you've done, you deserve to die 1,000 deaths, but that would be too kind. Clayman's trembling increased as Shion's iron grip seized him by the neck, lifting him effortlessly into the air. Her rage was palpable, like a storm threatening to tear him apart. My master ordered me to make you suffer. And I'm going to enjoy every second of it, not just for Rimuru-sama, but for my own satisfaction, for everything you've done to us. Without hesitation, Shion drew her odachi, Gorikimaku Veer.2, the blade glowed ominously with her fighting aura. In one clean motion, she severed all of Clayman's limbs, the sheer precision of the strike leaving no room for error. Clayman screamed in agony, his cries echoing through the room. But Shion gave him no respite, waiting just long enough for his limbs to regenerate before repeating the action. Some of the demon lords who watched from the sidelines, beings accustomed to violence and carnage, flinched at the sheer brutality. Between each wave of torment, Shion paused to sneer at her victim. This pain you're feeling, she hissed, isn't just mine. It's the rage of everyone in Tempest. It's for every life you've trampled on, for every one of my friends you harmed. This is vengeance, Clayman. And I'm going to make sure you feel it all. She began to peel his skin off his body, piece by agonizing piece, her movements slow and deliberate, as though savoring every second. She didn't rush. She didn't falter. And each time his body regenerated, she started again. By now, even the most hardened of the demon lords, a gathering of some of the most fearsome beings in existence, felt a chill run down their spines. The sight of Clayman being utterly manhandled, tortured without hesitation or mercy, was a warning. In their hearts, they silently vowed never to cross Rimuru Tempest. Then, suddenly Rimuru's calm voice echoed through the room. Stop. Shion frozen instantly, as though the very word compelled her to obedience. The barrier Rimuru had erected around the battlefield dissipated. Shion dropped Clayman unceremoniously to the floor and stepped back, still visibly fuming but yielding to her master's command. Rimuru stepped forward, his expression calm, yet the atmosphere around him was heavier than ever. He approached Clayman, who now lay half dead, weak and utterly pathetic. His once proud and arrogant demeanor was gone, replaced by nothing but fear and despair. He couldn't even move, barely able to lift his gaze to meet Rimuru's. Clayman, Rimuru began, his voice calm but carrying an icy undertone that sent shivers through the room. I'll give you one chance. Tell me who you've been working with, and I'll show you mercy. Clayman coughed, blood dripping from his lips as he mustered whatever defiance he had left. Do not mock me. I would never betray a friend, let alone a client. Rimuru regarded him with a look of amusement and pity. How admirable, he muttered, loyalty even in the face of death. But also, how foolish. Without hesitation, Rimuru reached down, grabbing Clayman by the head and lifting him effortlessly into the air. Clayman struggled, clawing at Rimuru's arm, but his efforts were meaningless. Rimuru's grip was absolute. If you won't talk, Rimuru said coldly, I'll just take the information myself. A terrifying wave of magic emanated from Rimuru as his hand began to glow with an eerie light. The energy flowed into Clayman, piercing through his material body all the way into his very soul. Clayman screamed as the magic tore into him, bypassing his spiritual defenses and unraveling his spiritual body. For semi-spiritual lifeforms and fully spiritual lifeforms, the spiritual body acts as a thinking device and permanent memory storage similar to the brain. As a master of magic, Rimuru had long developed a spell capable of extracting memories from spiritual beings. Rimuru made absolutely sure that the process was painful, each piece of Clayman's spiritual essence torn apart as Rimuru absorbed the memory locked within his spiritual body. Clayman's entire life flashed before Rimuru's eyes. His birth, his relationship and dealings with the cursed Lord Kozalime and the moderate Harlequin alliance, and even his connection to the enigmatic Grand Master Yuki Kagarizaka, nothing was hidden. Rimuru assimilated all the memories in mere moments, his thought acceleration allowing him to do so in a fraction of a second. For Rimuru, the process was over in less than a minute. But for Clayman, the soul-rendering pain stretched on for what felt like centuries with the help of thought acceleration. By the time Rimuru released him, Clayman's body fell to the ground like a lifeless doll, his spirit shattered, his will extinguished. Rimuru looked down at him coldly. That wasn't so hard, was it? His voice filled with disdain. Rimuru inwardly mused to himself, Yuki, huh? I suspected as much. What a shame. Clayman lay on the ground, broken in body, mind and spirit. His eyes wide in terror, locked onto Rimuru's calm, unbothered form. What did you do to me? Clayman cracked, his voice barely audible. His tone filled with disbelief, desperation and fear. Rimuru's cold gaze fell upon the broken demon lord. His expression was unreadable, devoid of emotions, yet it carried a weight that made Clayman's chest tighten. I simply extracted what I needed, Rimuru said, his voice calm and controlled, as though explaining a mundane fact. Every secret you tried to hide, it's all mine now. Footman, Terre, Laplace, Kozalime and even Yuki. Trust that I will be paying them a visit. Clayman's eyes widened in terror. The realization of what Rimuru said filled him with overwhelming fear and disbelief. No, he screamed, his voice hoarse and desperate. You, just kill me already. Do it, end my misery, Clayman cried at the unbothered Rimuru. Clayman eagerly waited for Rimuru to end his suffering. His was weak, too weak, so he resolved to retreat. The older demon lords, Rimuru, Guy, Milam and de Gruel were way out of his league. First he would report back to the boy. That took precedence over everything. All the information he had learned here, he had to bring it back. It's all right. I'll get out of here, I promise, Clayman thought to himself. But fate said otherwise. Kihihihi, just so you know, you can't come back to life. Rimuru snickered, watching as Clayman's plan fell apart. What? You're a deathman. You're planning to separate from your astral body and escape, am I wrong? Clayman was an underhanded sneak, but in the face of the Chaos Creator, all schemes matter not. You can connect your astral body to the ley lines here to keep your consciousness and memories protected. Yeah? So even if you lose your physical body, you'll never truly die. That's why you want me to kill you so badly. Hehehehe, if that's what you want. Wait, no, please stop, Clayman whimpered, his voice cracking with desperation as he begged for his life. Don't think your death will be painless. The brief moment you'll have before your soul dies will feel like an eternity. Use that time to think about what you've done. Rimuru's cold voice rang out. The swirling void in his hand expanded, tendrils of dark energy reaching out toward Clayman like the claws of a predator. Clayman screamed, his voice raw and filled with pure, unadulterated terror. No, please, don't, I beg you, don't do this. Spare me, Footman, help me. Terre. I can't die yet. Not here. Help me, Lord Kozalime, no. His words were cut off as Beelzebub consumed him, the dark energy wrapping around his body and pulling him into the endless void. Body, soul and all were greedily consumed. His screams echoed for a brief moment before fading into silence, swallowed completely by Rimuru's overwhelming power. When the void dissipated, the room was silent once more. Rimuru stood tall, his expression unreadable as he glanced at the spot where Clayman had once cowered. That, he said softly, is the fate of those who cross me. The remaining demon lords and spectators stood frozen, the weight of what they had just witnessed sinking in. None dared to speak. Rimuru Tempest had made his judgment, and the lesson was clear: no one who opposed him would escape unscathed. Breaking the tense silence, Guy let out a slow, amused chuckle. "You're always full of surprises, Rimuru," he drawled, his deep voice carrying through the room. Guy smirked as he walked up to Rimuru. "Not that I'm complaining. Honestly, I found it quite satisfying. You've got a flair for the dramatic that even I can appreciate." Guy then turned his gaze to the remaining demon lords, many of whom were still too stunned to speak, their expressions a mixture of fear and awe. "I think you've made your point loud and clear, Rimuru," Guy continued, gesturing toward the silent crowd. "You've not only put Clayman in his place, well, what's left of him, but you've also reminded everyone here why it's a very, very bad idea to piss you off." "Well, as long as everyone gets it," Rimuru said. He is expected of Rimuru. That was so cool and scary at the same time. Ramirez chattered as she flew up to Rimuru. "Wahahaha, Rimuru is so cool as always." Milam laughed along with Ramirez. Leon suddenly blurted out, "Oh, I knew the name Kozalime sounded familiar. He's the demon lord I killed." "You know him, Leon?" Milam asked. "Kozalime is the cursed lord," Carrion explained. "Milam, you and Kozalime recommended me as a demon lord, remember?" "Ooh, him. The cursed lord, I remember. Huh, so that's the demon lord Leon killed. Right. If I recall, Kozalime was also a deathman just like Clayman. I'm sure they were connected somehow behind the scenes," Carrion said. "Then it's possible Kozalime is alive," said Milam. Rimuru smiled. "Yes, Kozalime is alive. By now he already has a body, so he must be hiding at the moment." "Well, it matters not. I will deal with Kozalime and the moderate Harlequin alliance." Milam, with her arms crossed and a mischievous smirk on her lips, is the first to react. "Ahahaha. Those poor clowns have no idea what's coming. Honestly, I almost feel bad for them. Almost." Ramirez, floating midair, chimes in, "Yeah, they're so doomed. They might as well start writing their wills now, or, oh wait, they won't even have time for that." She shudders theatrically, but her lips twitch into a grin. Guy Crimson chuckles deeply. "How tragic," he says, his crimson eyes gleaming with amusement. "I guess their fate is sealed. I'll leave it to you, Rimuru." The three exchange glances, their light-hearted comments laced with an unspoken understanding of Rimuru's overwhelming power. They weren't just teasing, their words carried an undertone of truth that made even them respect the calm storm that was Rimuru.